All right, just as a quick review from Unit 1, okay, and I want you to think about this, and then when you think you got it, put your answer in the chat to a private message to me. Biological psychologists study the link between what? Okay, this is the same as, why, this is annoying. Same as biological psychology. Okay, so they study the link between what and what. Okay, all right, Sylvia, yep, that's, well, we'll put it in, put it in a private message to me. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, no, yeah, don't worry about it. Okay, all right. Okay, yep, Jonah, that's right. Yep. Yeah, well, everybody's going to get it right now. Yep. Okay, so biological psychologists study the link between brain or biology and our behavior. Okay, because when it comes down to it, our biology underpins everything that we do, whether it's neurotransmitters, hormones, genetics, brain structures, whatever. All right, it plays a massive role in everything that we do. Okay, why is this? Oh, there we go. All right, so what we're going to be talking about for the next couple days is the nervous system, which is the system of neurons and nerves and chemicals that basically controls um, all of our behavior. It has the brain, it has the spinal cord, and then it has all the nerves that come off of the spinal cord. It is what keeps us alive. Without a nervous system, without a central nervous system, you would not be alive. And it is unbelievably complex. Okay, this thing right here, all of this is made up of about 100 billion neurons. Okay, so we're going to talk first about structure of a neuron. That's what we're going to cover today. And then next class, we're going to talk about how neurons communicate with each other. So it's going to get really hard next class. And then overall, the nervous system. So, building block of the nervous system is what is called a neuron. Okay, building block of the brain, central and peripheral nervous system. These neurons receive, transmit, and process billions of signals per second, receiving them from other neurons, sending information to the brain, or from the brain, sending information back out to the body. Like I said, we have about 100 billion of them. Okay, our brain is made up of densely packed ones. And each one of them communicates with between 1,000 and 100,000 other neurons, making it so in our nervous system, we have around 1 trillion what are called synaptic connections, which you don't know what that is yet, but you will. They control things as simple as blinking. Right? Being able to blink is millions of neurons communicating with each other in a split millisecond. Okay, you know, the vast majority of them are a millionth of a millimeter. So again, this is like, it's a scale where like the universe is so humongous, you can't picture it. The nervous system is so minuscule, it's tough to picture it at the neural level. Okay. Most of a millionth of a millimeter. So think the thickness of a piece of paper and cut that into, a 600th of that. We do, however, have two of them whose axons, which is this long tail that comes off of the neuron, their axons are about a meter long each. Does anybody know where those two axons are located? Just take a guess. Not in your spine. Your spine is billions of little tiny neurons that are all connected into what are called nerves. Anybody else have a guess? Not your brain. Do you know how long a meter is? Right? They're about, the axons are about this long. Okay. Where else might we have two really long axons? In your legs. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to try to stand up. So you have two neurons. Here's the base of the spinal cord right here. You have two neurons that extend down, axons that extend down all the way down to basically to the middle of your foot, to like your big toes. All right. These are called, anybody know what they're called? You can kind of see them right here. They're called your sciatic nerves. Okay. And these are why it hurts so damn bad to stub your toe. Okay. So if you think about neurons are playing this like really intricate game of telephone with each other. And so if you burn your hand, okay, it actually takes a little while for like that pain signal to get up to your brain, right? And so when you burn your hand, it doesn't really start hurting for like a couple of minutes. Okay. And then you really get that pain signal. That's because what happens with telephone? If you're playing telephone, what happens to the message when it gets back to the beginning? Guys, this isn't even a psychology question. It gets distorted. Okay. So that's sometimes neural signals get distorted. And that's why sometimes something that you think is going to hurt really badly doesn't hurt really badly because the pain signal goes away. That's because it's having to be sent from one neuron to another neuron to another neuron to another neuron to all the way up to your brain. Okay. With your sciatic nerves and with stubbing your toe, it's just one continuous neuron right there. So that signal doesn't have any chance to get distorted by the time it gets to your spinal cord. Right? So it's kind of the difference between like hearing information secondhand, hearing it through the grapevine, versus hearing it from the proverbial horse's mouth. Okay, like getting information firsthand. That's kind of how neural communication works. Okay, so what I want for you to do real quick is you all are doing so much on your computers and whatnot. I want you to do something a little bit more tactile. Go ahead and get a blank piece of paper and a pencil, pen, marker, whatever. And on that blank piece of paper, I want you to draw this, okay, what I have up on the screen. And it can take up pretty much the whole thing. And we're going to use this as we go along. I'm going to have you label one of them today, and then I'm going to have you do some other stuff with it the next class. So go ahead and draw it. Doesn't have to be nice. This is my picture right here. I'm not a good artist. Okay, so, I don't have high expectations for it. Make sure to leave a space in between the two of them. Okay. All right. Did I put this slide on your all's PowerPoint or not? I did? Okay. All right. I can't. Sometimes I update mine and then forget to update your all's. All right, cool. So, all right. There's what neurons kind of look like in a neural network. All right. So, all we are going to talk about today is neuroanatomy. Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm having issues with, I'm having issues with this taskbar. It keeps moving around. Okay. All right. So, neuroanatomy, all we're going to do, so I want you to label this on your drawing as we go. Okay. The main part of a neuron is the cell body. Okay. Also called the soma. Okay. Does anybody know what the word soma means? It's a Greek word. Yeah. It just means body. Yeah. You'll see this word will come up quite a bit in this class. All right. The cell body is just like any other cell. It just like most of you all have had cellular biology, where you learn the structure of a cell. Neurons, the basis of a neuron, it's just a very specialized cell. It has a nucleus that has lysosomes, ribosomes, mitochondria, DNA, RNA, mRNA, all that crap. Okay. So all that right there, the cell body is just a basic cell. All right. The purpose of this is to organize information to send out, particularly organizing the electrical signal. So just so we know, like the nervous system basically runs off of electricity. So like within our bodies, we have electricity that is produced within these neurons. Okay. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly just so, because it doesn't, all this stuff that we're covering today is mostly just like memorize this and know where it is located on a neuron. Because if I gave you a test question that says, on what part of the neuron is the arrow pointing, you would have to know the different parts. You will have a test question like that, just FYI. All right, now, coming off of the cell body are these branches called dendrites. They're called dendrites because, does anybody know what the prefix dendro means? Dendrology means tree or branch. Okay, so these dendrites, I don't have it on here, but these dendrites receive chemical messages from other neurons. Okay, at the end of dendrites, they have, and we'll see a picture of this in a little bit. At the end of dendrites, we have what are called receptor sites that receive these specialized chemical messages from other neurons. Does anybody know what these specialized chemical messages are called? I said it earlier. If you don't want to talk, you can put it in the chat too. They're called neurotransmitters. Okay, so we're going to get into later on how all this works together, how these are chemicals that trigger an electrical signal within the neuron. Okay, but the dendrites are basically the part of the neuron that listens to other neurons. Now, this tail that is coming off the cell body is what is called an axon. And we can kind of think of a neuron like kind of like an iPhone charging cord. Okay, with this little part, whatever it's called, receiving the electrical signal, and then it kind of puts it all together right here. And then the electrical signal travels down these wires to wherever it is going. The axon here that you can't see the whole thing of, but it's a wire tail that comes out that's underneath there, is what transfers the electrical signal that's produced right here, transfers the electrical signal down the neuron. This electrical signal is called an action potential. We'll get into next class how that works. Okay, this electrical signal is going to communicate via neurotransmitter with other neurons, with glands telling them to secrete a hormone, to muscles telling them to contract. Okay, right? All neural communication starts with this electrical signal that travels down this wire that is underneath these little circular things. So the axon is like the wire tail. Covering the axon is a layer of fatty tissue called the myelin sheath. Okay, the myelin sheath's purpose, it's not in all neurons. It's only in the central nervous system. Okay, but the myelin sheath's purpose is to protect the axon. Right, and it helps to speed up neural impulses. It helps to speed up that electrical signal that's traveling down the axon. Think about when you have an iPhone cord and it starts like wearing out, maybe you bend it in the wrong spot too many times and it starts to get holes in it. What starts happening with that cord's ability to charge? It gets worse, right? Right? The electrical signal isn't able to travel all the way down the cord because some of the wires start to mess up. Myelin sheath is the same way. Okay, we need to have that plastic covering on there. We got to have the myelin sheath on there to help protect the axons. Basically looks like this. There are diseases that involve what is called demyelinization, which is where the myelin sheath starts to deteriorate. Specifically one where the myelin sheath of neurons in the spinal cord start to deteriorate and they begin to lose control of their muscle. People begin to lose control of their muscles. Anybody know what disease it is? ALS is one of them. Yep. And then there's one other one. Multiple sclerosis. This is one that you could be asked about. Okay. Multiple sclerosis deals with the demyelinization of certain what are called motor neurons. Same thing happens too, just in the brain with Alzheimer's. Okay. With Alzheimer's, all right, what happens with people who have Alzheimer's? Somebody in here knows. Yeah, they're not able to retrieve memories. That's partially due to the demyelinization of neurons in areas of the brain that deal with memory retrieval. Once those neurons start to demyelinate, okay, the neural impulses die within them, and so they can't actually retrieve these memories anymore. All right, make sure to ask questions if you have some. Okay, last thing. So at the end of the axon, depending on what type of neuron it is, and just so we know, this is like the basic, like stereotypical, like archetypal neuron. The axon at the end of it sort of frays out into multiple different endings, what are called axon terminals. Now, who has an idea? Why might the axon fray out into multiple different endings? What does it allow for it to do? Not necessarily travel faster, but we've talked about communication. Yeah, yep. Communicate with more neurons. Okay, it'd be just like if you had 8 heads instead of one and you were able to talk to 8 different people at once. Okay, so here's a little. So right here, we have the axon terminal. You'll also see it called a terminal button. At the end of the axon contains chemical transports, right, what are called synaptic vesicles that contain neurotransmitters. So these chemical messengers are kept in the axon terminals, the end of the axon. Now, important thing to remember, neurons do not touch each other, okay, except for in the heart. In the heart, everything is electric. And so they touch each other in the heart. They're all connected. Everywhere else, they do not touch each other. There are tiny, tiny, tiny little fluid-filled gaps in between neurons called synapses, or you'll also see it called synaptic gap or synaptic cleft. These little gaps are the gaps between the axon terminal and the dendrite. And what happens, and we're going to talk about this next time, what's called synaptic transmission. When there is an electrical impulse in a neuron, it travels down to the axon terminal and causes it to release a bunch of these chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. And then what they do is they jump over and they bind to receptor sites on the dendrite, and then that causes another action potential in that neuron, what's called the postsynaptic neuron. So I know that is probably confusing as hell right now. All right, don't worry, we're going to go over it in more detail next class. I'm going to confuse you even more with it probably. All right, because it's challenging. All right, so all of these different terms you just need to know. Going into next class, when we talk about how all of this happens, you got to know what these terms mean. Okay? If you're interested right here, okay, these 2-minute neuroscience videos, you can just find the channel on YouTube. These are really good. Okay, I'm probably going to embed more of these throughout the lectures for you all to use just as supplemental material. Okay, but I highly recommend watching these 2-minute neuroscience videos. They go over what we just spent 15 minutes going over. They go over it in 2 minutes. Okay, so I know this is a lot. It seems like a lot. It is, I mean, this is relatively hard stuff. Okay, so one thing with this unit especially is some of the stuff, if you don't get it, like some of the stuff in this class, if you don't get it, I can explain it to you in a lot of different ways. Like I can give you a lot of different examples for stuff and whatnot. This just kind of like, it is what it is. And so like, if you don't get it, it might be up to you to really spend the time like finding different videos, reading in the textbook, whatnot, to really try to understand it. Because I can really only explain this stuff in like one way. Now too, for these terms, for the real life examples, and when you're doing those, I know it's tough to come up with real life, like a real life example of an axon is an axon. Okay, but I don't mind. You can always do like analogies, like the wire of an iPhone cord. You can draw pictures. You can do any of that sort of stuff with these when we do this with real life examples. All right. Okay, one last thing, just a little hint. For the purpose of this class, now in the AP exam, they could throw a wrench at you, but for the purpose of this class, I am always going to have neurons going from left to right. So if I ask you to label one, the left side of it is always going to be the dendrites, and the right side of it is always going to be the axon. All right? All right. Questions, guys, before I let you all go? No?